many of you here have ever started something so small, so tiny, that you didn't even realize it would change your life? Maybe it was starting a new hobby, drinking more water, or just choosing the stairs instead of the lift. Well, for me, it began with three things: a pen, a notebook, and a head full of thoughts. So, I should probably tell you who I am, right? I'm Dr. Hana Abdul Kareem, a dentist, a published author, a young researcher, but more than all that, I am a hopeless writer, always putting fragments of my heart into words. When I first stepped into the college as a dental student, I thought life would just be about exams, clinics, and lectures. But the reality hit differently. Some days were surely overwhelming, but the rest really lonely. I had come here with the dreams of becoming a cardiologist. I wanted to mend hearts, but life had other plans. I didn't get the path I dreamt of, yet here I am, still holding a heart full of ambitions. In those moments, I could have easily let that stress consume me. Instead, I reached out for something small, tiny, writing a few lines before bed, journaling thoughts between classes, capturing reflections, even if it was just one sentence. And I wrote. Some nights I stitched my wounds with words and hid them between pages. Some mornings I poured my doubts into ink and found they lost their weight. These tiny habits became my quiet anchors amidst the chaos. But let me be honest, it was never easy to balance studies, clinics, and the stress of publishing. When you're new, you don't know how it works: editing, proofreading, deadlines. Yet somehow, those tiny pockets of time meant everything. I didn't have huge blocks of free time. What I had were pockets of choices. 5 minutes waiting for a lecture, I would note down an idea. A cancelled patient slot, I would refine a line that I have already written. We often think passion needs huge time blocks. But for me, it was about those micro moments turning everyday poses into creation time. Now, let me ask you all a question. How many of you here check your phone at least 30 times a day? Be honest. Yes, guilty as charged. Now imagine, instead of just scrolling, you just spent maybe 5 minutes a day doing something that you love: reading, writing, journaling, painting. Would that change anything? Yes? Of course it will. And that's not magic, that's micro change. James Clear, author of Atomic Habits, writes that tiny habits compound into an identity. You just don't do the habit, you become the person who lives by it. 5 minutes may seem nothing, but 5 minutes a day is 30 hours a year, and 30 hours can change your life. And here's a fun fact: neuroscientists says our brains love small wins. Every tiny success releases a little dopamine, and that's our brain's way of saying, hey, let's do that again. And before you know it, small wins stack into big habits. And that's what happened with me. Publishing my first book during the third year, the next one after final year, and the third one during internship. It was hard work, exhausting at times. But behind each milestones were deadlines, consistency, and patience. And here's the thing: everything extraordinary almost always begins with something ordinary. Coffee is just beans crushed and brewed. Diamonds are just carbon under pressure. And a TEDx talk, just an ordinary girl who once just had a pen and a notebook standing here before you today. This is not the story of someone who made it to the top. This is a story of someone who almost did, who fell, faded, broke, faltered, yet still chose to begin again. Because it's those tiny habits, tiny beliefs that matters the most. And here's a quick recap. After years of filling my notebooks and journals, I decided to submit my first manuscript to the publishers. And you know what? Yes, you guessed it right. They turned it down. Not once, not twice, but many times. They told me poetry and emotions don't sell. Each rejection hurt. I remember thinking, maybe my words aren't good enough. Maybe my story isn't worth sharing. But the same habit that healed me also taught me persistence. If I could write one line on a bad day, I could also keep submitting one more time. And then it happened. My first book, Poesy, was published. I should have been the happiest celebrating with my friends. but I was lying in a hospital bed recovering from illness. You see the irony, don't you? I remember holding that book in my hands for the first time. The smell of fresh ink, the weight of paper, my name on the cover, and I thought, even in the hardest seasons, tiny habits can blossom into something extraordinary. But let me tell you something that I've rarely admitted. I wanted to leave it all sometimes. I thought of never publishing again after the chaos I had to go through my first book. But I didn't stop, not one, not two, but three. Because behind each milestones were tiny habits that kept me moving forward. Along this journey, I had the incredible opportunity to meet Dr. Shashi Tharoor and present my books to him. He smiled and said, "A dentist who writes poetry? She must be sensitive to your pain." I thought to myself and smiled, "Sir, you don't know the half of it. I want to become someone who does root canals by day and heart canals by night." And that struck a deep chord in me because it reminded me of something that I always held close to my heart, that your profession should never be a hindrance to your passion. You can be both a clinician who treats and a writer who heals through words. From the very beginning, I didn't want to become a doctor or a dentist among the masses. I wanted to do something different, create a change, touch hearts, and it was those tiny habits that helped me make the big changes. And I didn't have a huge crowd of mentors guiding me. I just had a friend who had published before, a supportive husband, parents, sisters, and a few who stood by me. And that's enough. You don't need a stadium of people cheering on you. You just need a few who believes in you, and most importantly, you need to believe in yourself. And of course, there were people who doubted, questioned, and dismissed. And that's when I learned first, you need to believe in yourself, and most importantly, in your tiny little habits. Now, I want you all to close your eyes for a moment and think of one person who believed in you when others doubted. One person who gave you that courage. And if there is no one like that, imagine yourself. And I want you to hold on to that feeling because sometimes it's that belief plus the tiny little habits that will carry you forward. A dear friend of mine used to remind me, "Hana, one drop a day, one step at a time." And one step at a time did great things. Step by step, my journey moved ahead. My journey even led to a newspaper feature with the headlines calling me the writer doctor. I smiled when I saw that because it was proof that your profession shouldn't silence your passion. It can coexist, in fact, amplify one another. Like I said, I wanted to become a cardiologist. Life rerouted me, yet still, in a different way, I touch hearts with my heart. I realized maybe that was always my calling to heal, yes, but also to feel, to understand that healing transcends the hand that treats, it flows through the heart that listens, and souls that create magic from pain. But this isn't just my story. It could be yours too. Because the truth is, these tiny little revolutions, tiny habits, belongs to all of us. So I ask you this. What's one habit that you could start today? Reading a few lines before bed? Drinking more water? Or just writing a few lines of gratitude? I had a friend of mine who made it a rule to put aside her phone just 10 minutes before sleeping. And soon she was reading, writing, and resting better. And like I said, that's not magic, that's micro change. For me, it was my notebook, but for you, it could be a gym mat, your recipe book, your canvas. The habit itself doesn't matter as much as your choice to nurture it does. Because in the end, habits don't change what you do, they change who you are. And we are not alone in this. J.K. Rowling didn't begin with a grand plan or a writing desk of her own. She just scribbled in cafes while her baby slept. And the stolen moments with pen became Harry Potter, a story that touched millions. Proof that small beginnings can often have extraordinary endings. So, my message today is simple. Don't wait for grand plans or perfect leaps. Start with what you have: a pen, a notebook, a head full of thoughts, whatever it may be. Let your tiny habits carry you forward. Let them become your stepping stones. Let them carry you through exams, challenges, and self doubt. And one day you will look back and realize those small things weren't small at all. They were the greatest revolutions that made the biggest change in you. And remember, the seed is small, the soil is ordinary, but water it daily, and one day you will stand in the shade of the tree you have planted. And if an ordinary girl like me, who had no roadmaps, no right contacts, no guidance, nothing but a pen and stubborn little habit could create a lasting change. And it shows that tiny little habits can transform any journey. I wasn't the brightest in the room, nor the most qualified, nor the one who had it all figured out. Most days, I was just a girl scribbling between lectures, crying between rejections, and laughing at my own clumsy draft. Yet here I am, proof that you don't need perfect plans or grand circumstances. All you need is patience, persistence, and a pinch of faith. If I, with all my detours and chaos, could turn tiny habits into books and books into voices worth sharing, then what excuse do you really have for holding yourself back? So let me leave you with this. Find your way into the light. Don't give up without a fight. Take no shame in not being the same, for you are supposed to be a whimsical claim. As you walk out of this room today, remember tiny habits will move you forward. Tiny drops will still make an ocean and create a big impact in your life. Thank you so much for your patient listening. And this was my story from tiny habits to big changes. And I hope as you walk out of this room today, you also can take one small step towards your own story too. Thank you and have a very great day.